Good evening, everyone. Welcome to California Today. I'm David Zhang. Here is a preview of some of today's top stories. Governor Gavin Newsom chooses a replacement for Dianne Feinstein's seat. The late senator passed away at the age of 90. A busy weekend for the governor, reviewing and acting on more bills. One bill repeals part of the state's controversial COVID misinformation law. 12-year-olds could be given more authority, leaving home without informing parents. We hear more about AB 665 from an attorney. California is getting a new senator to replace the late Dianne Feinstein. Some are criticizing the governor's choice, citing her current place of residence and scrutinizing her past roles.
California Governor Gavin Newsom has selected Laphonza Butler to fill Dianne Feinstein's Senate seat. Newsom previously pledged to appoint a black woman for the seat if Feinstein couldn't finish her term. He's now making good on that promise. A political commentator for CNN on Monday pointed out that this decision won't make sense to some.
Outside of San Francisco, this may not make sense. It seems, like it may seem like identity politics, sort of taken to an extreme. I mean, he really sort of announced in advance what the criteria would be, and those criteria didn't necessarily make a lot of sense. There's a lot of different ways to do your politics. That wasn't necessarily the best way from a governance standpoint.
Laphonza Butler is also the president of Emily's List, an organization that helps elect Democratic female candidates who are pro-abortion. The president of Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America commented on that, saying, "Today's Democratic Party stands for abortion anytime, for any reason, with no limits up to birth." The former director of Planned Parenthood, who's now a pro-life advocate, commented on the appointment, calling Emily's List a fundraising machine for pro-abortion political candidates. Others are saying that Butler doesn't actually live in California. This FEC filing appears to show her residence as Silver Spring, Maryland. Another screenshot taken from Butler's page on the Emily's List website states she lives in Maryland. The webpage didn't include that part as of Monday afternoon. Butler on Monday said, "I'm honored to accept Governor Gavin Newsom's nomination to be U.S. Senator for a state I have made my home and honored by his trust in me." Dianne Feinstein died at her home in Washington, D.C. on Thursday. She was 90 years old. An official cause of death has not been released.
Laphonza Butler will fill Dianne Feinstein's Senate seat until the end of her term next year. Feinstein's Senate seat will be up for election in 2024.
California Governor Gavin Newsom will appoint Laphonza Butler to fill Feinstein's Senate. Following her appointment, Butler will serve as senator until the November 2024 election. Following Feinstein's passing, she posted a tribute to Feinstein on social media, calling her a titan in the Senate and a legendary figure for women in politics and around the country. According to Newsom, his choice to appoint Butler amounts to an interim appointment, adding that he wouldn't appoint any of the candidates who had been running to succeed Feinstein in 2024, including Representatives Adam Schiff, Katie Porter and Barbara Lee. But Butler will be free to run for the seat in 2024 if she chooses. It's currently unclear when she will be sworn into office. It could happen as early as Tuesday when the Senate goes back into session. Cost MNS, NTD News.
The governor signed more bills into law this past weekend. This includes repealing the COVID misinformation law and rent protection.
Among the bills Governor Gavin Newsom penned into law is SB 815, known as Healing Arts. Buried in the text is a one-sentence clause that nullifies part of AB 2098, often dubbed the COVID misinformation law. Passed last year, AB 2098 allowed doctors to be punished for not following government directives on COVID-19 with their patients. The law faced multiple lawsuits that cited violations of the First Amendment. This recent move to repeal the COVID misinformation law was a late addition to SB 815, a bill whose main purpose is to set up a new, unrelated pilot program for physicians. Another is SB 567, which strengthens protection for renters. An existing law prohibited property owners from increasing the gross rental rate more than 5% or a maximum 10%. The new law would make the owner liable for civil action and authorize the Attorney General and the City Attorney to step in. Under the personal income tax law and the corporation tax law, 50% of the taxes went to the College Access Tax Credit Fund. Now, with AB 1400, that money from the College Access Tax Credit Fund will go towards accredited historically Black colleges and universities. Money from the fund previously first went to the general fund, then to specified agencies for administrative costs. Newsom vetoed a few bills, including shoreline erosion control and public beach programs, alternative vehicles and electric and hydrogen infrastructure, and benefits on unemployment insurance.
The California governor signs a controversial bill into law recently. It prevents school districts from removing books they deem inappropriate. NTD's Daniel Monahan speaks with an attorney from an organization called Facts, Law, Truth, Justice about another California bill now awaiting Newsom's signature.
Assembly Bill 665 is sponsored by California Senator Scott Wiener and Assemblywoman Wendy Carrillo. The law would allow kids 12 and up to leave home and check into a residential facility without parental consent. Attorney Nicole Pearson discusses the bill.
AB 665, again, basically says that a child can leave their parent's home at any time without notice and for any reason. That is a complete affront to due process of law, which is guaranteed in the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Federal Constitution, as well as the California Constitution. It is one of the most important and sacrosanct rights that all of us have. We must be given notice that our rights are in jeopardy.
Pearson says AB 665 completely deprives parents of those rights by eliminating current legal requirements that a child must be the victim of abuse, incest, or neglect before they can be removed from their parents' home without notice.
So that's the first concern, due process rights. Also, the fundamental constitutionally protected right of parents to direct the upbringing, the care, the education, the health, the religious training of their children. That's another direct affront. It also is an affront to parents' rights to speak freely, to exercise their religion.
All a child would need to check into a potentially dangerous shelter is for a so-called professional person to agree. But according to the bill, that can be a counselor trainee or a social work intern. Bill sponsors Wiener and Carrillo, neither of whom have children, say the bill enables kids who are Medi-Cal recipients to receive mental health services for free. But Pearson says that goal could easily be achieved without subjecting parents to a potential nightmare scenario or exposing children to unknown dangers of overburdened shelters with little supervision and the potential for predators. The attorney states that simply amending one word from the Health and Safety Code would achieve this.
Adamantly oppose this bill.
Pearson says seeing the effect these bills have on people in real life fuels her and her law practice, Facts, Law, Truth, Justice, to continue to fight for people's rights.
I see the families who are being torn apart. I see the children who are being shoved into government systems and programs without resources and support, who are being abused, neglected, and trafficked.
Being a voice for the voiceless is something the attorney says she takes very seriously. Pearson says Governor Newsom's recent decision not to sign another controversial bill, AB 957, which would have forced judges to consider a parent's affirmation of a child's chosen gender in custody battles, shows the importance of keeping the pressure on. She is calling on those who are concerned about children's and parents' rights to go to protectkidsca.com. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
We'll take a short break now, everybody, but here is a look at what we have for you when we come back. Los Angeles officially adopts a zero bail policy for misdemeanor crimes. Some offenders can now be immediately released from custody. The future of the U.S. in what GOP presidential candidates shared. They gathered in Southern California this weekend to try and win over supporters and what their top policies would be if elected to the Oval Office. A professor shares more on why humans procrastinate. So don't delay and stay tuned to learn more on how to end the habit. More on those stories coming up on California Today. Welcome back to California Today. I'm your host, David Zhang. A new zero bail policy in Los Angeles County. This policy gains controversy for changing how long arrested individuals can be held in custody. Here's NTD's Christina Corona with the details.
LA County officially moved to a zero bail policy system Sunday, replacing the years-long practice of setting cash bail amounts based on the alleged crime severity. Supporters say it's a question of fairness, while critics believe it could be more dangerous to society. The new policy eliminates the current cash bail system for all but the most serious of crimes. This marks a significant shift in how the court handles arrested individuals and how long they stay in custody. The zero bail approach will apply to misdemeanors and certain nonviolent felonies. County Sheriff Robert Luna expressed concern over the policy. He said crime victims who see offenders immediately released from custody are left with little confidence in the criminal justice system.
And our communities have been not shy about telling us about how nervous they are about this change. It also discourages our deputies and police officers who may have a hard time trying to accept the fact, and they have a tough job as it is, to hurrying to respond to a crime in progress only to watch a defendant walk away with a citation while the victim looks on in complete disbelief.
Most individuals arrested for nonviolent or minor offenses will either receive a citation and be released in the field or booked and released at a police or sheriff's station with orders to appear in court on a specific date for arraignment once they are actually charged with the crime. Arrestees who are believed to be a potential danger to the public or a flight risk will be sent to a magistrate judge. The judge will review the case and determine whether the person should be held in custody pending their arraignment or released under non-financial restrictions such as electronic monitoring. During their court appearance for arraignment, a judge can modify or cancel their release conditions. We spoke to a couple of residents who shared their thoughts on the new policy.
This is ridiculous. Honestly, I think that you guys releasing people, you're just going to create more crime. So now you're going to bring us back to the old West days where people are going to take things into their own hands and handle them. Well, you're going to see a bunch of people getting released to jail, and once they come out, what's to stop them, you know? And then what, you're going to walk up and write them a citation to show up to court? If they did the crime, what makes you think they're going to show up to court?
I think it's going to create more crime. You're going to get a lot of people who are going to be released. It'll make the police work harder, and they're not going to really want to enforce anything.
On Friday, 12 LA County cities, including Whittier, filed court papers in LA Superior Court requesting an injunction blocking the zero bail system being put into action, arguing it will harm public safety. It was unclear when that legal challenge will be heard. Christina Corona, NTD News, Whittier.
GOP presidential candidates visited Anaheim for the California Republican Party fall convention over the weekend. Former President Trump, Senator Tim Scott, Governor Ron DeSantis, and entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy all made the trip to speak with and win over supporters. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more on the weekend event.
A California Republican showdown played out over the weekend, with primary rivals competing for a spot in voters' minds under the GOP frontrunner's shadow.
California was once a symbol of American success. Today, under the radical left fascists and Marxists that run your state, that's who's running your state. Bad people. It's becoming a symbol of our nation's decline.
GOP candidates currently running for office shared their top policy goals with NTD. U.S. Senate candidate Eric Early says seeds of a Marxist form of dictatorship are starting to grow in the country.
Day as U.S. Senator, I will do everything I can to fight against that, to fight for all the people, we the people in this country, and that goes across party lines, across racial lines, across socioeconomic lines.
Mark Cargile, U.S. House candidate for California's District 35, says if elected, he wants to take on issues that are hurting Americans, like high gas prices.
Situation where our parents have to decide between food and fuel, and if they don't have fuel, they can't go to work. So they're having to make choices that should never be made in the most prosperous nation on the planet.
The congressional candidate offered his diagnosis.
Here's the truth. If you don't get your moral compass right, you're going to make bad economic decisions.
Jason Zhang, candidate for California's 11th congressional district, Nancy Pelosi's district, says he's running to make sure those people that need help from the government actually get it.
I will make sure you have the ability. We're making City College free for all San Franciscans, right? And we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to fight your way out of poverty. But we're not going to hand you a blank check.
John Cruikshank, a candidate for LA County Supervisor, says he's running because things keep getting worse in the county and the current board is not solving the issues.
So many of our friends and family have been leaving Los Angeles County, and many of our businesses have been leaving, and that's because the free market capitalism has been under assault by our current board of supervisors. Things like rent control, eviction moratoriums, minimum wages, these are all artificial things that do not work. They actually make it worse, not just for the people they're trying to attack, which are typically our businesses, but it makes it worse for the people that are on the lower income scale because of inflation. Inflation is something that we need to attack head on. And until we do that, we're going to see the misery of people continue to rise. We're going to see more homelessness.
Cruikshank says there would be no new tax increases, rent controls, or eviction bans under his watch. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
How do we overcome the habits of procrastination and overthinking? I speak with Dr. Loretta Bruning, author of Habits of a Happy Brain, on how brain chemicals direct our behavior and how it is possible to retrain your brain to overcome procrastination.
Well, Dr. Bruning, thank you to come be on our show. Now, we're going to be talking about procrastination. I would just say every discussion of procrastination should start with a confession. I am guilty of procrastinating. I always wait till last week to file my tax return, and I always want to delay things. So tell us, why are we wired to procrastinate?
Sure. So we are not wired at birth. Our wiring comes from experience. Early experience, because that's when we have a lot of neuroplasticity, which builds the big pathways in our brain. Our brain is designed to go toward rewards, but away from threats. So even though you want to do that thing, you see it as a threat. So why do you see it as a threat? Because of something that happened in your past, because we're all wired by early experience. So the most common example is that somebody told you, oh, if you do it, you're going to make a mistake. So you're so afraid of making a mistake that you'd rather do nothing. And that's a huge pathway in your brain, is anything I do, it's going to be wrong, so I'm not going to do anything.
Now, is there a brain chemical that's responsible for that behavior?
Sure. So cortisol is the threat chemical. And a lot of people have heard about this in the context of an animal running from a predator, because it makes you feel like you're really going to die.
Fight or flight.
Exactly. Yeah. Panic attack is another sort of like modern idea of it. But small bits of cortisol are widely thought of as the stress chemical. So if doing your taxes is wired to your cortisol, then like as much as I want to get my taxes done, but then when I think about doing it, a cortisol pathway is activated and this terrible feeling turns on. And then what do I do when I feel terrible? Every one of us has learned a cortisol response.
There's a Chinese saying, once you're bitten by a snake, for the rest of your life you're scared of seeing the shadow of a rope. Is that how it works?
Exactly. That's perfect. And I'm literally afraid of seeing the shadow of a rope. I'm actually afraid of snakes, so it's a really good saying.
Is there anything that the person can do to use that knowledge you based on your research and to apply that and to be less of a procrastinator, or parents to help their kids if they're forming those habits early on in their life?
So if a person is procrastinating and we know that our brain expects a reward, then how can I break the procrastination? First, give myself a really small step forward that I know I can succeed at, and then give myself a reward. So to use the cliche example of doing your taxes, we've heard like, well, first I'm going to get all my tax paperwork out, and I'm going to set a timer, and I'm only going to work on it for 5 minutes at a time. And then I'm going to maybe watch TV for 5 minutes and then work on my taxes for 10 minutes and then watch TV for 5, and then you get yourself going in 10-minute increments. And after a while, you're so into it that you don't want to stop. And that's the dopamine pathway that you've built.
You have written quite a few books on this subject. Which book would you recommend for people who want to learn more about procrastination?
Sure. Well, Tame Your Anxiety is a good explanation of what I just said about how bad feelings are real physical neural pathways built from real experience, and we can build new neural pathways.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brewing.
Thanks for having me.
That's all we've got for you tonight. We would like you to join us again on California Today every weekday at 8 p.m. Make sure to check out our broadcasts at ntd.com/California-today. You can also find all of our top latest clips there, ready to share with friends and family. Send us a message on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Gunjin World, or through our email, california.today@ntd.com. I'm David Zhang. Have a wonderful evening.